So I think you have to make these political calculations as well.
Okay, so you ran a good government, but you saw a drop in vote share and decided let's abandon the national conference. I just want to give our viewers a sense of what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir. In the Kashmir Valley, the BJP is leading in 1. My producer will reconfirm, but I was told that this was Amira Kadal, but we will get a confirmation of that in a moment. The Congress is leading in 2 at the moment. We are told they are coming from the Rajouri Poonch area. The national conference is leading in 1. And the PDP, the People's Democratic Party, is the leader at the moment in the valley. It's leading in 7. But since it's leading 9 overall, that means 2 of its leads are also coming from the Jammu region. And that's important because if they have to form a government, a stable government, they need to win in both Jammu and in the valley. In fact, let's look at Jammu. At the moment, the BJP is leading in 4. The PDP is leading in 4 in Jammu. So at the moment, interesting results coming in, and that could be a story of this election which could give Mufti Mohammad Saeed some hope that he could be the next Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. The BJP leading in 4 in the Jammu region and the PDP is leading in 4. They are sharing the seats in the Jammu region. Ladakh at the moment, we are not getting any leads at the moment in Ladakh. Remember, 4 seats on offer in Ladakh. But the big picture that is emerging, Mufti Mohammad Saeed emerging in pole position in Jammu and Kashmir, the BJP set to sweep Jharkhand. I think that's what we can safely say at the moment. Jammu and Kashmir, of course, there could be twists and turns because these are very early leads coming in that state. Let me take a break. As we head into the break, listen to what Jitendra Singh of the BJP, the face of the party, the Minister of State for Home, has to say. Someone who might even hope one day to be a Chief Minister in Jammu and Kashmir. Back in a moment with plenty more. You're watching Your Verdict here on Headlines. Welcome back. The battle for Jammu and Kashmir and Jharkhand. That's the big story this morning here on Headlines today. The big story, of course, from Jammu and Kashmir is that the battle is between the PDP and the BJP for who will be the single largest party. The PDP is at the moment well ahead. 15 to 10 of the BJP. Congress 2, National Conference 4, others 1. One of the stories, of course, is the BJP as of now is leading in 1 seat in the valley, but it is advantage to the PDP, as you can see there on your screen in Jammu and Kashmir. Seat-wise, as we said, region-wise, it is dominating the Kashmir Valley. The BJP is now, interestingly, as of now, leading in 3 there. The Congress in 2, but it is the PDP which is dominating the region. But the story could be the BJP getting its first seat possibly in the valley. We'll have to wait and see if that happens. Remember, these are postal ballots. Pandit votes are also being counted at the moment. But in Jammu, there is a story because the PDP is doing well in Jammu as well. BJP was expected to do well, but it is not sweeping Jammu as of now. And if the PDP does well in Jammu and holds on to its triumph during the general elections, then the PDP will be in pole position to form the government in Jammu and Kashmir. On the other hand, let's then take a look at what is happening in Jharkhand. I want to give a sense of what is happening in the neighboring state of Jharkhand, and that is where the story seems more or less done and dusted. 11 out of 81, I know it's very early, but the BJP is already leading in 7. The Congress is only leading in 1 at the moment. Remember, it's in alliance with the RJD and the JDU. The JMM, the Jharkhand Mukti Morcha of Shibu Soren, is leading in 2. The JVM of Babulal Marandi is leading in 1. But all of them are really taking a bit of a hit. The real gainer at the moment is the BJP in Jharkhand at the moment. So it appears that Jharkhand could be the one where an election can be called much earlier. The sense, Manisha, that I get from Jharkhand is that the BJP, is it benefiting from the fact, as we see on the screen, the split in the opposition? The Congress, JDU and RJD are together, but the JMM is on its own. The JVM of Babulal Marandi is on its own, and the BJP is in an alliance with the All Jharkhand Students Union. So is it Modi versus the rest, and the rest getting divided as we saw in Haryana to some extent, and we certainly saw in Maharashtra to a greater extent?
The rest are undoubtedly divided in Jharkhand, and the BJP has got a far more united front, so to say. But there are 2 caveats to the analysis that we have. One, the BJP is united, not just vis-a-vis the opposition, but in comparison to its own self, where it was largely a factionalized party. The second main caveat is that the JVM was a party which could have been a party like the Aam Aadmi Party. It could have been a party that could have given on the corruption and the governance agenda a run for its money to the BJP. Now, the JVM is, by the way, not really a Congress party, even though it's been in alliance with the Congress. So the JVM has been on the stake for the BJP as well as the Congress. So in a sense, the future possibility of alliances for the BJP remains in the future. The JVM could go this way or that. So definitely a divided house, but largely vis-a-vis its own self rather than vis-a-vis the opposition.
That's interesting. And Mani, the other morning story, let's be clear. As of now, Mufti Mohammad Saeed is making gains in the Jammu region. And the BJP, as per early trends, is making gains in the valley. As of now, they are leading in as many as 3 in the valley. These are postal ballots, but these are some signs. If this remains, then it could be a positive sign also. If the PDP starts winning in Jammu and the BJP maybe even gains 1 seat in the valley, it suggests that this sort of wall that exists, this Pir Panjal range that you see, the divide of Pir Panjal, is not as indestructible as you might suggest.
1 seat for the BJP is less than 1 swallow to make a summer. There is no way in which I would regard the BJP as being a pan-J&K party unless it gets many more seats.
It's a breakthrough. It's a breakthrough.
1 seat. What is the big breakthrough is the PDP winning so many seats in Jammu.
Or leading at the moment.
So leading. Well, I hope they'll eventually win it, because if the PDP is seen on both sides of the Pir Panjal, then the larger objective that I have for India in Jammu Kashmir will be fulfilled.
Are you saying that Mufti Mohammad Saeed therefore is the best bet for Jammu and Kashmir at the moment? Is the Congress banking on us? Because, interestingly, the Congress was in alliance with Mufti Mohammad Saeed from 2002 to 8. They left you after the Amarnath land row, and then you went with the National Conference. Over the time, the Congress has also been accused in Jammu and Kashmir of playing what you described as either hypocritical politics or opportunistic politics.
No, there are not fundamental ideological issues involved. The PDP and the National Conference are political parties there which don't have such a deep divide as exists between Seshadri Chari and myself. Here it is the Rift Valley. There it's just the valley. And I don't see what I see as hope is if there are political parties that have a presence in both Jammu and Kashmir, then a Jammu Kashmir government.
As of now, the BJP is also having a presence on both sides, because the BJP is set, as of now, if these numbers stay, to cross its previous tally of 11 in the assembly. So, in a sense, there are 3 missions. Mission 11, Mission 20 and Mission 44, Mr. Seshadri Chari. You see this as history. If the BJP even wins 1 seat in the valley, will you see it as a historical moment for your party?
Yes, the question is not 1. We may even end up winning more than 1 seat.
Yeah, but what is more important, as I said?
What is even more important, I would probably be expecting, is the percentage of votes that we are able to manage in the valley.
I think that's an important point.
That is going to really increase marginally this time. And this increase is what is going to suggest about the future politics of this country. It's a rejection of the politics that has been happening all these around these years in Jammu and Kashmir. We have been treating Jammu and Kashmir as a totally different, alienated, totally out of the world area as far as the Indian politics is concerned. It's not like that. People in Jammu and Kashmir also have the same and similar aspirations as anybody else in any other state of this country.
But I'm going to pursue the point. Do you believe that winning that 1 seat is a major thing, and will that give you the confidence, in a sense, maybe to reach out to a Mufti Mohammad Saeed, and that the two of you believe can give Jammu and Kashmir the kind of government that can be truly stable and represent both the Jammu region as well as the Kashmir region?
Reaching out to parties and all that is something that we can decide only after the total seats are all available, and who requires how many seats to form a government is all something that is going to result in arithmetics. But what is important is we would expect a clean and efficient government in Jammu and Kashmir, and whichever party comes to power.
Yeah, but
if the BJP requires 10 seats to form a government, and if PDP is ready to give it, it's good game. If PDP requires 10 seats and if BJP is able to give it, I think
so all options are open.
Finally, what is important is have a strong, stable, working government in Jammu and Kashmir.
Gohar, what would be, some would say is an ideal solution, make the BJP in a power sharing arrangement with the Mufti Mohammad Saeed, as could well happen now, given the numbers that are coming. Do you believe that could represent both the region, and maybe over time some of these scars of the past could heal. Maybe some of the divide which exists between Jammu and the valley could heal if you had a government between the BJP and the PDP as appears at the moment.
I think we will have to look at the, it will be a disaster for the PDP to, make an alliance with the BJP.
Why? Why will it be a disaster?
All along during their campaigns, they have been saying that, they are against the BJP's communal kind of politics which they have played all along in Jammu, and so their principal stand is that they won't make an alliance.
You don't see Mufti Mohammad Saeed aligning with the BJP?
I don't see that happening, but Omar Abdullah had that.
Doesn't every state government need the support of the centre? Isn't Jammu and Kashmir the ideal state in that sense for Mufti Mohammad Saeed, who's seen as a more sagacious leader, to reach out to Narendra Modi?
No.
Maybe? No?
No. I think you will have to first analyze the 6-year rule by the Umar Abdullah-led government along with the Congress. There were 3 main issues. One was the hanging of Afzal Guru, the 2010 killings, and the post flood situation where nothing was done in relief and rehabilitation processes. And that is a vote against those factors. So it's not BJP, I don't see PDP.
I just want to slightly temper the tone that comes from Srinagar especially. I meet students from Srinagar and from the other side of Kashmir when I am in the UK at my own institution, and I meet students from Kashmir when I am in India. The one thing that I can confirm is that their aspirations are very similar to the youth all over. Yes, there are issues, and that requires Mr. Narendra Modi. It seems he's not winning in Kashmir. He needs to step down from the tone that he had during the campaigning, and he needs to borrow from the sagacity of the leader of his own political party, a Vajpayee type of line now, to move ahead. There needs to be a dialogue. He's not been able to break the ice. He's not been able to get there. But as far as aspirations are concerned, I would confirm that the leadership has a different tone and tenor, but the youth of Kashmir and of the valley speak a language that is very similar.
But something is, hold on.
Very
hold on,
similar.
something, we are still, just a minute, Gohar. We are at the moment at 8:50, 8:45, something is changing in the air because the BJP is as of now leading in 6 in the valley. Please understand, there is something which is changing. The BJP leading in 6 in the valley, we don't know what the final tally will be, and the PDP is leading in as many as 10 in the Jammu region. So something is changing in the air in the region, and maybe we need to appreciate that. Maybe sitting in television studios, we see a divide which is permanent. Maybe the people on both sides are looking for solution, looking for options, and not seeing it in the narrow manner in which perhaps sometimes we see it in television studios, Mr. Chari.
See, that is exactly what I've been trying to say. We are all looking at Jammu and Kashmir from the prism of what Pakistan thinks, what America thinks, what everybody else thinks about it. Jammu and Kashmir region is not very different from Tamil Nadu or Maharashtra or Jharkhand or Delhi.
It is different.
There are issues. There are problems. Let me please let me complete. Please.
Yes.
There are problems. There are problems which are peculiar to each and every constituency in this country. But that does not make that constituency so different from this world.
You do not have two prime ministers in a single country. Jammu Kashmir have had its prime minister and Sadr Riyasat. So to compare it with another state like Tamil Nadu is a disaster. I think that's total.
Can I just bring in Sudhindra Kulkarni? Sudhindra, at the moment, the trends are fascinating here in Jammu and Kashmir because, and I'll bring in Shujat also at this moment and all our other guests who are coming in from outside, is that you've got a situation where the BJP is making gains in the Kashmir Valley and the PDP is making gains in the Jammu region. Do you see that as a positive sign?
Of course, it's a positive sign for any ruling party or a ruling coalition in Jammu and Kashmir. It would be a good sign if the PDP, which is today emerging as the leading party, to have seats in Jammu and the BJP making gains in Kashmir. This shows a certain integration, not just regional integration, and we hope that it also signifies a certain social integration.
That's the important
BJP
point.
should learn a lesson from this.
Yes.
That if they want to govern India in a stable manner and in a give good governance, then they must reach out to all sections of Indian population.
Sudhanshu Mittal, respond to
including
that.
Muslims. So their narrative has to change.
Sudhanshu
and
Mittal,
it is good that the Prime Minister during the election campaign has changed the narrative.
Yes.
He in fact adopted and endorsed what Atal Bihari Vajpayee had said. That our approach to Kashmir is Jamhuriyat, Insaniyat, Kashmiriyat. This approach, if it is sincerely adopted, is going to do a lot of good to Kashmir and to India.
Can I get a quick response from Sudhanshu, and then I'll go to you, Sujat, because at the moment it's appearing, it's a fascinating, it is going to be a hung assembly, it appears, in Jammu and Kashmir, but it's interesting the change that is taking place within the regions, where the PDP is gaining in Jammu and the BJP is making some gains in the valley.
19 leads to the BJP overall.
Rajdeep, you are vindicating what I've been saying. And I've been saying this not only today, all through that why we analysts sitting here are still looking at politics from the old prism of caste, creed, sex, region, language. You see, the aspirations of people are changing. Governance is the key. People want good governance. They want a corruption-free government. They want development. And the youth of this nation, it's a youth which is not seen the blues of partition. It's a youth which is looking at development. It is looking at success stories of youngsters becoming billionaires at 33. So
can I take that to Sujat Bukhari?
What is getting reflected?
Sudhanshu, can I take that to Sujat Bukhari, because you're on the ground there, Sujat, in Srinagar. You know, look at what is happening. Let me give you the overall tally, Sujat, in the valley. As of now, BJP leading in 6, Congress in 3, National Conference in 7, the PDP in 14, and others in 1. We are seeing the valley also being fractured, much like other parts of the country often are. So it isn't as if there is a wave towards the PDP or a wave towards any party. What does this indicate? Maybe there are aspirations which are mixed and multiple.
Rajdeep, I think that we need to wait for at least, some kind of clarity as far as the trends are concerned, because what I have observed as a reporter on the ground for last so many years, and you also know that it depends certainly about the pockets a particular candidate is holding actually. Maybe
these are very early trends.
Basically a pocket-based. Yeah, it could be a pocket-based trend in the sense that wherever from the candidate is hailing and that area is being counted. So, I would say that, trends are generally like that, but we will have to wait for that. But it looks like that Jammu and Kashmir is going for a hung assembly. Maybe some party would emerge as the largest party. But I was thinking, because you couldn't hear me, I wanted to actually chip in on an issue of division and the polarization the Jammu and Kashmir state has been pushed into. When Mr. Iyer was speaking about that division, and it doesn't augur well. It doesn't augur well.
I'm just wondering whether the polarization is far greater in our minds than it exists on the ground. I'm just saying based on early trends. I said it could change. It could change. It could change.
I'm not saying that taking the trends into account, but I am saying that on the basis of what is actually on the ground, what has been happening. And when Mr. Iyer said that the division of the polarization doesn't augur well for the state of Jammu and Kashmir, I would agree with him 100%. But I have to make a very important point, and that point is that this polarization has also been nurtured by the Congress over a period of time in last 12 years. Why do we blame only BJP for that? BJP encashed on that and they consolidated that. But it was done by the ministers of Congress regime in last 12 years who mostly were from the Jammu. And you will be surprised to know that in last 12 years, the Congress ministers put their foot down in appointing any head of the department from Kashmir Valley. I want to be precise, any Muslim head of the department from Valley into the Jammu region. I think they are more actually to be blamed for this polarization than the BJP in the real terms.
That's an interesting point, and I should get you, Manishankar Iyer, to respond that. Here what Sujat Bukhari is saying, the Congress has practiced the same kind of communal politics that today you accuse the BJP of, and this is precisely why maybe there is a backlash against the Congress's vision of so-called secularism. Secularists like you today are challenged by what actually happens on the ground. The manner in which your party actually acts on the ground is very different to the way you actually say things in a television studio.
I have no doubt at all that the Congress party on the ground does every now and then, far too frequently, go in an aberrant way from what its position is.
Is it an aberration now, or is it in certain parts, certain congressmen today have become just as hypocritical and opportunistic as any other party, even when it comes to so-called secularism?
I hope not, but I do think when I interact with people from the Congress and when I interact with people from the BJP, that there is a fundamental Rift Valley divide between us. And I think, although the Congress party is clearly on a downslide in Jammu Kashmir as it is in the rest of the country, or many parts of the country, the fact of the matter is that there is an easier tendency for the congressman to get back to the path of secularism than it is for the BJP to leave the path of communalism.
Can I also just on that note tell you that in Ladakh the leads are now coming, the BJP leading in 1 in Ladakh, the National Conference leading in 1 in Ladakh, and the PDP leading in 1 in Ladakh. So even Ladakh is experiencing some kind of a voter split, interestingly, and that seems to typify what is happening in Jammu and Kashmir at the moment. A split which is taking place in Jammu, a split which is taking place in the valley, and a split which is taking place in Ladakh. And if you look at the big numbers, the BJP now leading in 22 and the PDP in 28. The NC, interestingly, is doing better than many had expected. They're leading at the moment in 13. And Omar Abdullah is leading in Birwa at the moment. So Omar Abdullah is leading. Remember, he changed his seat to Gandarbal. The BJP is doing better. Look at the Congress party leading in 6. So as of now, if you look at it, possible governments that could be formed could be a Congress PDP government or a BJP PDP government. Those are the two possibilities that seem to be emerging. Yes.
I want to ask the Kashmiris on the panel, is a PDP NC government possible?
Never, right? You can never see.
Take the Abdullahs
You can never
out,
see
maybe.
the Abdullahs and the Saids on one platform. Not possible.
I said take the Abdullahs out, it may be possible.
Take the Abdullahs out, but you can't take the Abdullahs out like you can't take the Gandhis out of the Congress party. This is the problem with what are seen as dynastical parties. You cannot take the first families out of this party. On the other hand, Manisha, you have an easier time in your state that you've been tracking so closely for us of Jharkhand, because there it's becoming a clear race. It's now more or less certain that the BJP will form the next government in Jharkhand. They're leading in what, 22 at the moment. The Congress is leading in just 2. The JMM emerging as the main opposition leading in 5. And the JVM leading as of now in 2. Can we say with some certainty that we will have a BJP government? Who will be the chief minister? Because interestingly, the BJP is not even projected a chief minister for Jharkhand.
That's because the leadership there, the 3 that I spoke about, the Trinity, is unlikely to be one of the leaders. The more unexpected...
Arjun Munda,
Raghuvar Das and Ravindra Rai, the 3 of them not likely to be the front runners for the chief ministership. A lot of them, I wouldn't say who, campaigning in Delhi, so the high command culture coming in, but the news on the ground in Jharkhand that the unlikely people in the race could be the former Speaker of the Assembly, Mr. C.P. Singh, or Mr. Vinod Tube, the former IAS officer with a very clean image.
Let me ask Sudhanshu Mittal, since you are very close to all the leaders of Jharkhand, Sudhanshu, who's going to be the Chief Minister of Jharkhand?
I think it's going to be too premature for anybody to make a guess on that. All I can say is, just 1 minute, Rajdeep, because I understand, I know Jharkhand very well.
Yes.
I'm so happy that one state, which is such a prosperous state, it has all the natural resources, it is a state which should really have progressed and prospered, suffered out of a fractured mandate they always gave in the elections.
Right.
And look, it is very easy to criticize the political parties, but the people of Jharkhand had always given a fractured mandate. In such a situation, what was the alternative? That you looked for possibilities of forming government?
Yes.
BJP did form government. No political party wants to form a coalition government. If it is not fought in a coalition. But in this, the instability, the political instability was a root cause of the problems of Jharkhand, and that is what the people of Jharkhand has realized.
Okay.
They said we've had enough of political instability.
I take your point.
We want a stable government.
But you're not telling us who's going to be the chief minister. But I think it's very clear that the big headline of this morning, because Jammu and Kashmir, remember, early trends, mixed trends are coming in from Jammu and Kashmir, but Jharkhand is clear as daylight. The lotus is set to bloom in Ranchi. I think we can say that with some degree of certainty. The Narendra Modi magic of 2014 has clearly worked in the state of Jharkhand. BJP set for an overwhelming victory in that state. Let's take a break. When we return, there's plenty more to look forward to, because Jammu and Kashmir is really going to be a humdinger at the moment. The big question, the BJP may not achieve Mission 44, but is it making that big breakthrough there? And is Mufti Mohammad Saeed and the PDP set to form the next government in Jammu and Kashmir? We'll know that in the next hour or so. So stay tuned.